wherever you are in the world. My name is Carl. I'm a tutor here at TEFL.org. That means I help to train people to become TEFL teachers, English as a foreign language teachers. And we run a series of live webinars every week on a range of different topics, of which this is one of them. So if you're sort of interested in EFL teaching, or you want to become an EFL teacher, you're already an EFL teacher, then hopefully this is a good YouTube video for yourself. We are live, so if you're watching it on YouTube or LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever it is you're watching, if you write any comments in the chat, they come up on my screen, and then I can answer any questions you might have. Maybe you want to know about how to get into English as a foreign language, and maybe you have a particular question about the topic that we're covering today, which is pronunciation. Maybe you've got a question about a destination you want to go to. Wherever you are in the world, let us know where you are and put that question in the chat, because it's always good to know who is talking. I can see people saying hello already. I live in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where I work as an online EFL teacher, teacher trainer, a tutor for TEFL.org. I also work as an English examiner. I've been lucky enough to have taught in lots of places around the world, such as China, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Azerbaijan. I taught in Iraq for a bit. I've worked in Spain and Italy. And I've worked in the UK in various different jobs as well. So maybe you've got any questions about that, please do put it in the chat. Right, okay, I'm just going to get this PowerPoint up. So basically, today we're going to be talking about pronunciation activities. And I'm going to talk a bit about, I'm going to give a few different activities that you could do in the classroom. I'm going to talk a little bit about why pronunciation is important, also a bit about why some teachers have problems with pronunciation. I'd love to get any comments at all about this. So if you struggle with pronunciation, put that in the chat. If you have a particular question about an activity, or you've got an activity yourself that you know works really well, also please do let us know about anything like that. Good to see people saying hello. Hi Raminda in London. Hi Dick in Alabama. Elizabeth's in. Hi. Joyce is in as well. Lots of other people. I won't go through everyone, but they're the first 4 that I can see. Thank you very much. Right, so say it right. Mastering pronunciation activities. So why does pronunciation matter? So there's quite often a focus when you become a TEFL teacher, and you're a little bit, first of all, you're probably worried about grammar, and you are then a bit worried about maybe how to teach vocabulary, and you sort of forget about some of the skills that there are out there that you've got to teach. And pronunciation is one of those skills, which is quite important. And obviously, the most important thing is it improves intelligibility for your students. So that basically means the way that they can speak is understood, basically. And I've lived in various parts of the world, especially in sort of Southeast Asia, where there is some problems with pronunciation. So I worked in Vietnam, and there they have problems with the sort of ending of words. They don't quite often say the end of the words. And this can cause problems that can cause problems when they're trying to speak to people. It can cause problems when they're taking exams as well. Now, I've also worked in parts of the world where pronunciation is pretty good. Quite often, like the Middle East, the pronunciation around there is pretty good. So some countries have bigger problems with pronunciation and they can't be understood. And some countries don't have these problems. They might have problems with writing so much instead of speaking. The other thing to think about is that generally, all people learning English have different pronunciation problems by country. So it's quite easy to look up online if you're going to go work in Japan, for example, what pronunciation problems Japanese speakers of English have. So you can do a bit of research, and then you would sort of try and fix those problems first if you're going to go over there and teach. It can also boost learners' confidence. So in parts of the world where speaking isn't really taught at schools, in their high schools or even in their primary schools, they sometimes get to sort of a level where you might be teaching them, which might be sort of teenagers upwards, or it might be university level, or even adults, and they haven't really spoken much and they're a bit worried about their pronunciation. Or maybe they've tried to speak to people before and they've not been understood. So doing pronunciation in classes from kids all the way up can definitely boost the confidence of the learners. Can also support listening skills. Some of the activities that I'll be speaking about today, they start with listening activities, because a lot of pronunciation problems come from not really students being able to hear their issues or being able to hear the difference between different sounds in English. So it does definitely support listening skills. It's often overlooked by teachers. So if you are someone who's a high level of English, who has a high level of English, either you're a native speaker or you've got your English up to a level where you're an advanced level, you sort of maybe don't think so much about pronunciation anymore. And as I said, teachers often just worry about grammar and vocabulary, and pronunciation is quite important because it is wanted by students. If you do needs analysis and you ask students what they want help with, pronunciation comes quite high on the list very often. And some of the best self-employed teachers that I've seen on the internet and I've met over the years go down the pronunciation route to get students, because students are willing to spend a good bit of money on special classes and one-on-one classes if they think it will improve their pronunciation. Right. So some of the common teacher challenges to teaching pronunciation, first of all, is not knowing what to focus on. So quite often when I've observed teachers, they like to try and get their students practicing it at word level. They want to improve the student's ability to speak individual words. And while that is definitely part of it, through drilling, there are other parts of it as well. And it also does matter, as I said previously, about what country you're going to go work in, or what country your students are from. So not knowing what to focus on can be a bit of an issue. And the way to sort of fix this is to Google problems that people have, but also to just listen to your students and listen very, very carefully and try and work out what errors they have. Also, teachers have problems worrying about their own accent. I've had this before, where when I say a word, I'm sometimes getting in my head, have I spoken that right? Have I pronounced that right? When maybe I haven't. I always have this problem around advertising and the word forms that go along advertising. So adverts and advertisements. Advertisements. I quite often get that word wrong. And when I see that word coming up, when I'm reading it out, I get in a bit of a flush about it. And maybe there's words like that you have as well. Also, your own accent can cause issues. I work here in Northern Ireland, where people have very strong accents sometimes. And to be an EFL teacher, you've got to have quite a neutral, understandable accent. Also, teachers are a bit unsure how to make the pronunciation practice good and happy and engaging. Hopefully, I'll be able to show you a bit more about that. And also a bit worried about students feeling self-conscious or themselves feeling self-conscious. So all of a sudden, if you're teaching really well and you're really confident in what you're teaching, and then you've got to do some pronunciation and you're very self-conscious of the words you're saying, and if you're saying it right, especially with things like word stress, it can make you feel a bit self-conscious. Now, there are tools like Google, for example. If you put into Google define advertisement or advertisement, then it will come up and give you the pronunciation in the phonetic alphabet. It will also break it down in sort of more readable phonetics. It'll also show you how to pronounce it through speaking, through a picture of a mouth talking. So there are ways around it. And if you feel like you can't say a word, you just type it into Google and you get that up on the screen and you push play, go through the speakers, and then that is the model instead of the yourself. Right, so some of the key areas of pronunciation that you need to work on and figure out. So first of all is sounds, or sometimes called segments. And these are generally broken down to vowels and consonants, but there's also an area called diphthongs, and that is generally when it's a couple of vowels together, or can be 3 together. So vowels, sounds like or, oo, like this, the sounds of English. If you look at a phonetic chart, you'll be able to see them. Consonants are things like p, b, t, k, s, these sort of sounds. And you would teach these sounds individually, ideally. And you would maybe be able to diagnose if your students have problems with certain sounds themselves. Vowels tend to be harder for students to produce than consonants. There are sort of some caveats to that. For example, some parts of the world have problems with L and R. They get them confused. But this can quite often be done with things like minimal pairs activities. But generally, vowels are better to teach for intelligibility, because generally students have easier help with consonant. They know better consonants. Okay, so just something to be aware of. Stress and rhythm is another part of pronunciation to teach. So syllables and the stress in a word between syllables. As I said before, Vietnam, where I taught, has problems with final syllables, final sounds. So sometimes it's the syllables, sometimes it's the sounds. They have the problems with the end. You've got to work that out yourself and then teach it. Word stress, as I said, in terms of different stress within a syllable, whether it's on the first syllable, the second syllable, the third syllable. Also sentence stress. So within English, if we say a sentence, we don't talk in a staccato form like this. We tend to stress some particular words more than we would other words. Intonation, so that's whether we go up and we go down as we speak, can change the meaning, so can be quite important. Right, so here's your first activity. I'm going to talk a bit about minimal pairs first. I'll give you an example of what minimal pairs are. So bit and beat, there is a different sound in the middle, and that I or E sound can change the meaning. Desk, disc can change the meanings. Again, just two individual sounds. So they're the vowel ones there. You can also have some consonant sounds. Fan and van can be tricky for some people. Pat and bat. So these are examples of minimal pairs. And you would do activities around these sounds and showing students how the sound at the start or in the middle, wherever it is you might be, can change the meaning. And it's basically just from the way they produce. Now, you can do minimal pairs just by playing some and getting them to write them down, and you can get them to just sort of pronounce them differently. But let's try and make pronunciation a bit more fun. Let's try and make it a bit more energetic. Okay. So a teacher says a word. So you could, for example, print off some different minimal pairs. And then you, as a teacher, have got them in your list in front of you, and you say one of them. You say desk, for example, and the student has all these pictures on in front of them, and they hold up a picture of a desk, and you can laminate these pictures and do them over and over again. If you're teaching online, you could have the pictures up on a interactive whiteboard, and the students have to click on them. Okay, that's a different way of doing it. So, you just say these minimal words, and then the minimal pairs differently. And then next one, you say disc, and they have to have a disc, and then you highlight desk, and they show a picture of a desk. This kind of thing can help them make it a bit more energetic. Now, you can also get them to mime. If you're doing some words where there's maybe verbs involved, or if there's, you want to try and get them to mime out the nouns, that's one way you could quickly do it. I have seen a teacher before do this where the students have to draw it very quickly, but I'm not so sure about how that one works. You could say stand up. So you could say, right, I'm going to read out some lists. I'm going to read out a list of words here now. And you can say, when you hear the word desk, everybody stand up. And you go through and you go patch, you go batch, you go disc. See if anyone stands up then. Some will stand up and then they'll look around and realize that they've got to sit back down again. But you can do sort of minimal pairs work around that. Tends to sort of bring a bit more energy into the pronunciation classes there. Then once you've done that a bit, you can flip it, and you could have a different student that comes up the front, and the student could say, I'm going to say pat, and they go through all the words, bit, beat, fan, desk, pat, and then the students pronounce these, and then you as a teacher as well, you're standing up, everyone else is standing up, clicking, whatever it might be, flip it and get them to do a bit of the work as well. They can also do it obviously in pairs as well and things like that. Another activity which concentrates a bit on stress, called stress busters. So you can write a few words on the board with different stressed syllables. So now you could do that around like a particular word form. So, you could, happy is a good one to do because you got happy, happily, happiness, which have sort of different stressed syllables within them. One thing to say is if you're not sure what syllable is stressed, because if you're a native speaker, it can be quite new to you to try and think about what one is stressed. If you just go on Google, it will show you the stressed syllable. If you put in define happily, it will show you which syllable is stressed. So you can do this beforehand in your prep, so you know exactly what syllable is stressed. So you write a few words on the board with different sort of stressed syllables, stress patterns. And then you can clap or tap the syllables with the students. You can go happily, and then you do a harder clap on the stressed syllables, and then the students go along with you, or they can tap it on the pen, this kind of thing, to show them and let them hear the different stressed syllables. Sometimes you have to act it out and be a bit more stressed, show a bit more stress, or be stressed, show a bit more stress on some of the syllables. Then you get the students to repeat it to you. You can get them to say the certain syllables, to say, and then do the correct stress, and you clap along with them, or they work it out themselves. Get students to do it as well. There's some variations that I've sort of done before. You can do a jumping game. So they sort of crouch down, they bob down for each syllable, and then when it's a stressed syllable, they jump up. Something like that, or they just stand still and then they jump on the stress syllable. You can do that to give them energy. Kids quite like doing this as well. You can also do a run to the board and underline the stress syllable. So you could have the words written on the board. You can have a couple of cues of kids or adults, and then you say the word, they run to the board, and then they write underneath, they underline the stressed syllable. Or you could break it up, the syllables, and they have to hit the stressed syllable. You can also do this online by clicking as well. I hope these make sense. If you've got any questions about any of this, please do put it in the chat. I can see some questions coming in already, and I can see people saying hello as well. Right now, this is called jazz chants and rhythm drills. Now, what I would say is this lady on YouTube, she's got some YouTube. She's also got a great book, has some really good stuff on this. So if you want to know more about it, check out this lady, Carolyn Graham. She can definitely explain it a bit more. She's also got loads of examples of the activities, that kind of thing. So have a little look at this. It's worth checking out if you want to improve your pronunciation teaching. Right. So what basically you would do is you prepare a short, natural dialogue, 2 or 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? Oh, I went out for dinner. Oh, did you enjoy it? Yes, I did. It was a great restaurant. What was the restaurant? Now, and I've probably gone too far then. You're sort of looking at 3 or 4 lines of dialogue. And then basically what you're trying to do is get the students to work out that certain words in English are stressed. So you would say this naturally, what did you do yesterday? And you get them to you get them to listen to you. I went to the pizza shop. And okay, it's not going to sound quite natural because, when do you speak, clap into yourself? But basically you practice doing this and you clap the stress words, and you'll realize as you speak that some words in a sentence are not stressed. They're not on the clap. They don't have that natural rhythm. And you get students to listen to this, and then you can add a beat, you can add clapping, or you can add tapping. I've seen some people use sort of metronomes. I'm not so sure how I would work with that, but I think just clapping or tapping can work pretty well. And you'll find that the stress words hit the beat. Okay. So the important words in English, basically the content words, naturally come to hit the beat that you're doing. Weak forms or words that are maybe not quite as important do not. So what do I mean by fish? So what do I mean by weak forms? The classic weak form is fish and chips. What did you have for dinner? I had fish and chips. You don't say and, you say un. You make it weaker. and you'll find that those words are not stressed so much. So it gets people to sound a bit more natural, gets people to feel like they're talking a bit more like a native speaker, which is what a lot of students want to get to. And then you get students to repeat them as they're clapping, or you can get them to make their own dialogue. And then, and you say to them, okay, now work out which words are stressed. And they say, well, I don't really know. And you say, well, okay, we'll just try and clap along with it naturally. Keep a steady beat and see if you can fit in your words alongside that. And you'll see them in their partners going, and they're trying to work out their pronunciation, and then they quite enjoy it. Music is they feel like they're making music, and then you get them to eventually get rid of the clapping, and they're talking more in a natural way. So these are quite cool. But as I said, Carolyn Graham is the lady there to check out. Right, intonation arrows. So basically, this is where you write some questions or dialogues on the board, and the students then look at these dialogues. And what you can do is you could draw an arrow up or down to show some sort of pitch movement. So, sometimes in English we go up, and sometimes in English we go down. And this can change the meaning. There are activities you can do, for example, around the word really, and how if you pronounce really differently, really, the different sort of intonation patterns can change the meaning with it. So draw an arrow up or down to show the pitch movement. And this is quite important with questions. It often happens if you are going along, if you're doing practice on question forms, question words, question grammar, also throw in a bit of intonation there with questions. And then you can, as you speak, or even if you play a dialogue that you're hearing online, you can get students to hold up the arrows to show that they realize that it's going up, or to show that it's going down. Get students to do that, or you can print out the conversation and then they listen along and they draw the arrows to go up and down as well on that. And then they can then create their own pattern. They can also, you can also get them to model it, have them repeat, write their own dialogue, that kind of thing. And then they practice going up or they practice going down. And again, there's parts of the world where the way they speak is quite flat. So getting them to do a bit of this can make them feel more like native speakers. Great question there from David. I'm going to see that one. I'm going to come through to that one in a second. Please, any questions, do put them in the chat. Or if you disagree, or if you agree, or if this is something new to you, also please do put that in chat as well. Right, pronunciation bingo. So bingo is quite often done with numbers. Can also be done with words. It can be done with like vocabulary, but it can also be a good vocabulary game to play. So, and this is the sort of thing, once you've made it once, it takes a while to make this activity, but once you've done it once, you can use it again and again and again. You got it stored in your OneDrive or something like that. So you can get bingo cards with target pronunciation. So this could be, for example, individual sounds. So, if you've been practicing E and I, this kind of thing can, you put lots of different words with the E and the I sound in it. And maybe you put 10 words on a card. Don't give everybody the same card. You've got to have sort of, depending on how many cards, how many people you've got in your class, 10, 15 different cards. And then you've got a list of words which cover these, and you say them out loud in a random way, and they cross off the words that they hear. Can also be done with sort of syllables. So you could have like 4-syllable words if you've been studying 4 syllables, or if you're sort of doing it really well advanced, you can do different stress patterns for 4-syllable words or 3-syllable words, that kind of thing. And then you say these words, and then they tick them off, they cross them off. And you say that obviously the teacher says words that fits the target. The students listen and cross them off, and as they go, and then the winner reads out the words. So they read out the words, and you go through your list and say, "Yep, we did that one, we did that one, we did that one." Okay, great. You check the pronunciation. Then you could even get the whole class drilling it. Then, and and they've won the game. And then you could choose the winner to come and be the caller, and then you play the game again 2 or 3 times. Can often be played before it gets a bit boring, and then she's become the caller, and then you just go from there. Lots of stuff of this online. I'm pretty sure something like ChatGPT as well will be able to help you to make these. Right, so some tips for pronunciation. Pronunciation activities. Now, I have seen teachers do lessons that last an hour just on pronunciation, and it's great. I think I've seen some teachers do this really, really well. But I think that for the everyday normal teacher, just having particular activities that are quite short and fit into your lesson plan somehow is the way to go. So just as I sort of said with questions, you then do a bit of intonation. You do some vocabulary, and you'll quite often see some vocabulary patterns where you can do some particular work around minimal pairs. You do some grammar, you might do some sentence stress alongside of it, but do them often. Try and do pronunciation in every single lesson, but you don't need to do it for 20-30 minutes, and try and get beyond just the listen and repeat, because that can be a bit boring. Use some visuals, use some movements, use some games, get all those up there. That can really, really help. Perfection is obviously amazing. It's very, very difficult to get a student to and the things, I don't really like saying native speaker, because there's lots of different types of native speakers, and who's the right one to aim for, which is going to go along with David's question in a minute. What you're really looking for them is to be understandable and to be able to communicate. They will say to you, I want to speak like a native speaker. I want to speak like the Queen or the King does. It's impossible. Think about if you are a high-level English speaker, think about your friends. Do they really have that accent? Do you want them to lose that accent? No, I don't think so. The key here is to get them intelligible and to be able to communicate. Create a happy atmosphere when you're teaching pronunciation, so that they're ready to make some mistakes, that they're not being self-conscious and they're not worrying about this. Okay. And try and work out effective error corrections. It's not something I've really spoken about today. I've done webinars where I talk about error corrections, but correcting them in a nice, friendly way can really help, and help to boost their confidence and help them to want to do this. One of the ways to do that is to get them listening to themselves, or working in pairs, doing dictations, things like that, making it aware of what they sound like. Okay. Just one more thing I just want to say before the PowerPoint finishes is that I've spoken about sounds, I've spoken about sentence stress, I've spoken about word stress. Sounds is still the thing to concentrate on the most. Probably after that word stress, and probably after that sentence stress. And then, intonation can be one of the easier things to teach, but sounds is the key, really. If they can get their sounds correct, then they're really a good chunk of the way there, because the rest of it sort of goes into having better overall pronunciation instead of individual communication. Thank you very much. Right, let's get rid of that. The sun has started, it's been so dark in here all day in Northern Ireland. All of a sudden the sun started shining out and it's right in my face, which is lovely. Right, let's go with, thank you. I should say hello to everybody, shouldn't I? Hello, David, Tim, hi, Ank, hi, Joyce, hi, Elizabeth, always good to see you. Dick's here, Raminder's here, Tim, I don't know if I said Tim. Hello, everyone. David, of course. Right, and a LinkedIn user. Good day. Thank you for doing this. I'm glad it's important. It's helpful for you. Well, I hope it has been. Let me know if it hasn't. David, hi. Have students asked you about British versus American pronunciation? 100% yes. I.e. vitamin versus vitamin. Terrible American accent. I apologize to all my American friends there. Also my American viewers. Yes, 100%. And Google can help you with this. So Google can show you different pronunciations. If you're not sure whether a word is pronounced differently in America compared to Britain, then you type into Google define. Should we? I'll probably show you, shall I? If I type into Google define a vitamin, let me get that up on the screen there. So if I type into, and then I need to share my screen again, 1 second. There you go. So, if you, let me see if I can zoom in. Thank you. Let me try my best to zoom in a bit here. Right. There you go, I think. So, if you look up here, it's got the two different pronunciations. That's not very clear, is it? Let me go a bit in. So you've got the vitamin and you've got vitamin. So, and you'll see there just beforehand, you've got the little apostrophe, which shows you where the stress is. Okay. So let me just try and remove myself there because I can't quite get, there we go. And then I need to zoom out again. There you go. So that will there show you the two different pronunciations of it. Okay. Obviously, it gives you all the definitions as well and things like that. Now, sometimes it will also show you some pronunciation stuff. There you go. Because I didn't click up here. You click on, I don't think it's going to, I don't think the sound will come up, but you got the British pronunciation and the American pronunciation there. So Google can help you if you're not sure. It's basically what I'm trying to say. If you're not sure what the different pronunciations are. And, this is also quite useful. If you click this, it will show you the way to pronounce it. You can slow it down. You can try and get students to recreate the different, I'm not sure how helpful this is, but it is there. The different sort of syllables and this kind of thing. Let me just get myself back on the screen here. Thank you. Right. What I should also say is you will see jobs advertised where companies want either an American English teacher or a British English teacher, because they're going to have loads of students that are going to go to America or a load of students that are going to go to Britain. Okay. You do sometimes get Australian English teachers wanted. And then that way, because they're sort of expecting you to be able to teach the specialized vocabulary that each of the different parts of the world have. And one thing I should also say is that whatever English test you do in the world, IELTS, Trinity, Cambridge, whatever it might be, the examiners are trained to know that there are different pronunciation for different words, and your students won't be punished in terms of their final grade because they say a different way. Did that answer your question, David? I hope so. Elizabeth, hi, as usual, Elizabeth. Any strategies for teaching pronunciation one-on-one besides simple repetition? So I think you're perfectly fine to play things like bingo with them. Why not? You say out the words, they sort of tick them off. Obviously there's the competitive side of things isn't there. But if you're teaching them this and then they just cross them off as they listen, I think that one works pretty well. Doing minimal pairs activities. I think all of those activities I just spoke about can be done one-on-one. If you're teaching online, they can still click and things like this. It's making people aware of the differences, listen and know the differences a lot compared to, and that will help them to produce the different sounds. Yeah. Repetition has its way for sure, but doing activities around it can work pretty well. Hi, Dick. What are some good resources for students or you to record answers? So you can do things like you can do this sort of thing in Google Classroom. You can get them to record some answers, that kind of thing. I use WhatsApp for one-on-ones for sure. Getting them to do different, send me voice messages or I send them voice messages. There was a website I can't remember its name right now. And it's a website basically where you get you can sort of post a question of you talking, and they can watch it, and then underneath they can reply, and they can record an answer to your question or something like that. Or even you could use it with pronunciation, where you sort of do a bit of repetition, where you pronounce a sentence, or you say a sentence, and then they have to listen, and then they have to produce it themselves, and you can just go through and click it. I cannot for the life of me think the name of this website. Whatever it is, it's got a very, very catchy title. Oh, I can't believe it. I've done it. Well, I've done webinars where I talk about online tools. I don't know Ellie, so it might work a bit like Ellie. But I teach a lot of one-to-one. I also have group WhatsApps for some of my classes when I'm doing face-to-face, and I get them to sort of send it in that. In pair work, I've got them to send each other WhatsApps. The problem is you can't necessarily hear them, but it can work. As soon as I close this webinar, I know that website's going to come back to me. Is Ellie good, Dick? Let me know. But yeah, I think WhatsApp is a really good tool. It's also quite a good tool if you've got students that don't have great computer skills, or maybe don't have a very powerful laptop, and you want to get them to do some sort of work with it. You can send them a question. They can then record a repeated thing. You could send them a sentence, and then they could do practice drilling with stuff like that. And you can listen to that sort of thing. Don't know any others. Sorry, Dick. Ank, hi. Any ideas what to look at when teaching pronunciation to students in Thailand or Vietnam? So yeah, so Thailand, a lot of problem with Thai students is they're stressed of syllables and word stress. They can sound quite kata like this when they're talking, like they're not very, like they sort of sound like quite robotic. So getting them to work on stressed syllables and to show that some words are more stressed than others. Vietnam is all about the final sounds of words. They quite often don't pronounce the final syllable or the final sound, and making them aware of this is a big part of pronunciation. So getting them to think about this sort of thing is the first step, and then getting them to produce it can also make a difference. Put into Google, Ank. If you put into Google or your favorite AI tool, what pronunciation problems of English do Thai people have, and give me some ideas, I reckon it'll come up with loads of stuff for you for that. There will be people who have built their PhDs around pronunciation problems for these countries. They would have written 10,000 words essays on Thai's people's problems with word stress. And if you find that, you'll be able to work from that. Google is your big help there. Hope that helped you, Hank. Thank you, everybody. Look at this sunshine that's shining now. It's beautiful. Who knew that the sun shines in Ireland? Thank you in late September. Thank you, everybody. I hope that was interesting and useful for you. If it was, please let us know. If it wasn't, please let us know. We've done lots of webinars on a range of different topics. If you go on our YouTube page, especially, you'll be able to find them on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. But if you go on our YouTube page, you can do some search. I think we must have a couple of hundred up there now, almost. I'm not quite sure. On range of different topics, not just theory ones and skills based like this, but also sort of practical ones about getting into EFL and how to find jobs, all this kind of thing. We've got loads and loads of stuff on there. If we haven't got the video that you want on there, do put it in the chat, and or send us a message on our website. You can go on our Facebook group, lots of different stuff. I hope you found that interesting. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in. Have a good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening. Bye-bye.